Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be doing something slightly different. Now, as you guys have seen over my usual videos, I do history and I explain events within history. I thought today, and it was also recommended on a comment from one of my past videos, that I should talk about historical or vintage fashion. Now, if you guys don't know, I do just vintage. I don't do it in videos because I feel like sometimes it takes away from what I'm trying to talk about, because vintage is different and I feel like people wouldn't sometimes, get past that and just listen to what I'm saying. I've got a vintage account on Instagram, shameless plug if you wanna follow. Do it. And so yeah, today I'm going to be talking about 1950s fashion, and this has definitely been done on YouTube before, but I like to do my own version of things because, it's different for everyone. Now, 1950s fashion is very overly done nowadays in terms of stereotypes. I just want to explain things that people wear that aren't authentic and the authentic equivalent, perhaps. Now, I'm not going to shame someone if you're into the rockabilly scene and you prefer like cherry print and polka dots. Wear what you want, I don't care. I'm just going to explain it from a point of authenticity. I'm not saying what you can and can't wear, I'm just saying what looks authentic and vintage and what doesn't. I understand that people can't afford vintage, it is extremely expensive, and I'm going to admit, on my vintage Instagram, some of the things I wear aren't vintage and they're modern to be worn in a vintage way because, like I said, that stuff is really expensive and I'm not going to lie about that at all. Before we get into it though, look at my new earrings. Got it from an antique shop for £3. I believe they're from the 80s, and I don't really do 80s, but like, these were kind of cool. If you guys know anything about me, black and red, two of my favourite colours to wear. I do like a bit of purple, a bit of green, but these two are my favourites. Now my drink today is vodka and lemonade. If you can see, it's got a little ship in there. I actually bought this for my boyfriend, but it's mine now. So, let's get into it. Now, this wouldn't be an authentic 1950s kind of fashion video if I don't talk about polka dot and cherry print. Now, don't get me wrong, polka dots were fashionable in the 1950s. They 100% were. But with a lot of repro brands and stereotypical vintage you see now, it feels like it's the only print they had, when in actual fact things like tartan and stripes and even certain Western novelty prints were even more popular than polka dots, and in my opinion a lot more fashionable. I don't know, don't get me wrong, I do like polka dots, but I wouldn't wear them myself. I do prefer more like less of a cutesy pattern. It's very ditzy looking to me, which if you're going for that really cute aesthetic, I understand, but I love it. I love a good stripe. I love a good vertical stripe. Everyone says, oh, it makes you look fat. Not true. Not true. Just wear what you want, who cares? Now, cherry print on the other hand is something that's more so formulated within modern day repro fashion. I've searched the internet for 1950s authentic cherry print, and it's actually incredibly hard to find 1950s garments with that pattern on. I remember seeing this British Pathé video of 1950s swimming costumes, and one of them had cherry print on, but it's not as big and garish as it is today. It was very small and very not really out there,
This, by the way, is mon chéri, the costume, not the girl. A cotton swimsuit made to fit trimly by a special elasticizing process.
Like I said earlier, the 1950s had a lot of novelty prints, and cherry print just wasn't the most used back then. It was used, but ever so rarely. Now, another thing I've noticed with some repro brands is that they don't get the hem length right. I'm not going to lie, it is a little bit of like I said I won't judge at the beginning, but for some reason hem lengths really they get me, So hem length during the early to mid 20th century changed so much. Alright, so in the 20s, for example, these are your knees, alright? 20s fashion, about there. 30s fashion, about there. 40s fashion, about there. Rationing and so on, it makes the hemline shorter. 50s fashion goes down again. The reason why the hemlines went lower in the 1950s was of Christian Dior. He created the new look in 1947 and it was almost down to your ankles, to the back of your mid-calf, I believe. In the late 40s, a lot of women actually didn't like this. They liked the shorter hemlines of the 1940s and were like, why should we cover up again when we've been wearing dresses and skirts like this for a decade now? But nevertheless, this hemline caught on in the 1950s. A lot of women wore very, very long dresses. But with a lot of repro brands, they seem to be on the knee or like mid-thigh, which is just not authentic at all unless you're wearing like a dancing dress or perhaps exercising or like a beach dress, you know, where you just take it off and there's a swim costume underneath. And this also leads on to another point, petticoats. Now petticoats back in the 1950s were very much just underwear. Now a big thing I see with repro fashion is that the hemline ends here and a petticoat goes on for another couple of inches. This isn't authentic. Like I said, it's underwear. You wouldn't want people to see it, so your dress would have to be just a tiny bit longer so that when you walk you can't really see the petticoat. But also, the extravagance of repro ones, with like bright colours and overly flouncy, were just unrealistic. If you look at 1950s photos, you'd see that some women didn't even wear petticoats. And in high fashion is where they kind of puff it out a bit more, but you still wouldn't see them. Now, the next thing I'm on to is Holterneck dresses. Now, I think I'm going to get a bit of hate for this one. Don't get me wrong. Holternecks, 1,000,000% were worn in the 1950s, 1,000,000%. But here's the big but. Every single, like, repro dress I've seen, or 90% of them, are Holternecks. In the 1950s, they had so many different necklines. They had a sweetheart neckline, they had a scoop neckline, they had V-line, a square neckline, but they had all these different necklines on, especially dresses. This is what I'm mainly talking about, dresses. But with a lot of repro brands, you can only seem to find the Holternecks. And as someone who likes to wear a bra, I like wearing a bra. Not really convenient, you know, because it goes like up here rather than across your shoulders. Now, another one I'm going to be getting onto is high heels. Now, when I see a lot of like inauthentic vintage heels, I see a lot of chunkiness, a lot of platform heels. Platform heels in the 50s, unless you were like a saucy dancer or something, they just weren't everyday shoes. They weren't really worn. They'd wear what we now commonly call court shoes, where it's like about a 2-inch heel, slopes down, and that's about it. They did have strappy heels, and these came in all different colours, but the whole platform chunky heel thing is very much a modern day thing. And now last but not least, this is less of a fashion thing and more of like an aesthetic thing, straight hair and bandanas. Now, in pretty much every single 1950s photo, you'd see a woman with pink curled hair. You just would. It's kind of seen down upon back then if you didn't have your hair styled. I mean, it's kind of gutting, but it was seen as shameful back then. You were seen as not put together if your hair wasn't properly done, especially if you were like a grown woman or someone in their late teens. If your hair wasn't styled, it would be done in a very tight bun so you couldn't see that it wasn't curled, or it would be put in a hairscarf, but not a bandana. Now, I'm quite unsure of where the bandana kind of thing came from. If you look back at 1950s catalogues and photos, you don't see bandanas an awful lot. You see headscarves, you'd see headdresses, you'd see hats, but bandanas with the paisley print, that's just a very, like I said, rockabilly kind of thing. But like I said, if you like wearing a bandana, go ahead, go for it. Do what you want, don't care. But don't let this discourage you if you like that kind of 50s section. Because like I said, in vintage there's so many different versions of it. You can go with authentic vintage, you can go gothic vintage, you can go rockabilly. There's so many different subcultures. Now don't watch this video and think, oh, I can't dress that certain way now. Do what you want. If you know like where your subculture's from and you know what you're dressing, you know what you're buying, who cares, you know? I think it only gets to me a little bit when someone wears like a mini dress with a floral print on it and goes, yeah, this is 1950s vintage. And I'm just kind of sitting there like, ooh, not really. It's not really though, is it? Like, you can wear what you want, but don't say it's something that it's not, you know? So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, it's a bit different to what I usually do, but you know, fashion history is something I'm incredibly interested in and has been for the last about 6 years of my life. Like I said, I do like regular history, I guess, but this is also another part of me that I enjoy so much, so much. So I hope you guys enjoy and see you in the next video. Cheers!